Morning, if you're just waking up with us, we've seen Hurricane Laura come ashore, really covering the area between Lake Charles out in each direction near the Texas-Louisiana border. And we do have crews covering this story from all over the place, really from Galveston all the way to Lake Charles. Yeah, some of the most incredible video we've seen this morning from that overnight activity was in Lake Charles. We want to check in with Channel 2's Robert Arnold, Robert, we caught some of that video from your 1 a.m. hit with us, and it was just incredible what you were trying to stand up in. What are conditions like now compared to overnight?
Only marginally better. We're still getting these incredibly strong winds, although they are not quite as brutal as they were. I can only imagine that the damage is going to be done to this area from these winds. We can't see much from where we are. Power is out through the area and it's black, but just from where we're standing, we've seen some trees down. We've seen bits and chunks. If you look over here, bits and chunks of signs and some other debris have been flying through here. That's calmed down only slightly. And one other thing, if you look over here, the hotel had placed these large umbrellas in the garage to keep them out of the wind. Very smart move, because they know that the wind, if they're out in the open, would just pick these up and toss them around. And it's still picked them up and tossed them around through this parking garage. It's also ripped off the sides of the parking garage. It's ripped down several of these signs, and that was one of the things we've been concerned about the most. If you look over here, it's twisted these up. These signs were on heavy, thick cables and chains. Sorry about that. My cable wire got a little tangled there. And it's tangled them up. It's ripped some of the signs down. That was one of the things we have been concerned about throughout the night and the morning, were these signs flying in our direction. Most of them have gone down. The other ones now are just hanging by the one side. Thankfully, the winds have died down enough to where that's not as much of a concern anymore. We saw some of the signs that point directions within the garage come flying through this area, and that has been one of the biggest challenges, is avoiding that debris that this wind is just, these brutal, relentless winds have been just sending throughout everywhere. We are on backup generator power, so at least we have some lights here in the garage, but we can't see electricity anywhere on the perimeters, anything beyond that. I did hear Cambrell Marshall mention that some of the storm surge projections were not quite as high as they thought, and that's good news, because we are surrounded. Where we are, we've got Lake Charles, you've got Prien Lake, you've got the Calcasieu River, and then of course you have any number of bayous and tributaries too. All were expected to come out of their banks. One of the things that I've been checking on throughout the morning is I do look out into the parking lot, since we're so close to the lake, seeing if any of that water's coming into the parking lot. I have not seen that yet, so that is one good piece of news. Now, I don't know, this is a little inside baseball for the people at home, but the way that I listen to you is through this cell phone, and I noticed my call has dropped. I don't know if you're still hearing me, but I need to redial. So if you had a question for me, give me a second and let me try and redial. Back to you right now.
Thank you, Robert Arnold. We do appreciate it. Communication obviously is very important. We'll let Robert dial back in so we can speak with each other. I mean, this is what Robert went through just a few hours ago. This was the what do we call it, the north side of the eye wall that came ashore, the side that has the strongest winds along with it.
Just incredible. These were images from about 1 o'clock this morning. This thing made landfall in Cameron, Louisiana. What was the time of that landfall, you guys? So this was at the time that Laura was making landfall, and this is what it looked like there in Lake Charles. And Robert Arnold was trying to stand up in all of this activity and could barely do it. Took a little bit of a break. He's back with us now, live once again. He's dialed in. Robert, go right ahead. Sorry to have the interruption.
No. I apologize for that. Cell service is so crucial to what we do out here, and when that gets bad, we're kind of dead in the water without that cell service, so I apologize for the interruption. No, as I was saying, fortunately, we have not seen that surge come in like we thought it would. I've been checking throughout the morning, trying to make my way out towards the parking lot, which is close to the lake, and thankfully that has not happened at this point. However, the winds, like I said at the beginning of this report, I shudder to think about the damage once this sun finally comes up. And we'll go back over this way, as I was showing you earlier. that wind, and from hurricanes, especially when you have winds this strong for so many hours, it just keeps working and working and working until it will wrench anything it can, pry it off of the side like this, all the siding that's come off of this, all the signs that have been wrenched off of the cables that were holding them into the ceiling. We've seen trees go down, and that started happening very early on, because as the ground became saturated and wet and those really strong winds came in, those trees started going down quickly. It's been difficult for us to get out and do much more of a survey because it's hard for us to see with no electricity at this point, so we're waiting for a little bit more light before we can go out and try and survey a wider area. But even as bad as these winds are now, they're a far cry better than they were about 3 hours ago.
Yeah, and at this point, Robert, Cambrell and Britta have been telling us this is the southern eye wall that you're feeling now. So obviously, the comparison is much different. I think what's going to be interesting to see is, the storm surge projections, as you said, maybe not as bad as they thought initially, which would be anything in the positive direction is good. But it'll be interesting to see the folks living down along the Calcasieu River, maybe folks living along the lake, to see if in fact those winds pushed any of that river water or any of that lake water up into their properties.
Yeah, the one thing that I was saying throughout the night was it is a good thing that Lake Charles did seem to be mostly a ghost town. I mean, I can't tell you, the sheriff was just constantly, the emergency management coordinator, constantly coming out saying, please heed these mandatory evacuation warnings because we can't get to you. Once these winds reach sustained 40 miles per hour, we can't get out to get to you. So if you get in trouble and you are hurt, help is not coming until Laura has moved through the area. So we did notice that a lot of homes were boarded up. A lot of people took advantage, tried to sandbag. But when you have winds that are this strong, it's almost nothing can prevent them from causing damage through the area. So that's going to be one of the areas we'll first check. Is immediately along the lake to see how those homes fared. We also really want to get into Cameron Parish because that's right on the Gulf. Cameron Parish is south of us, and so that's where the storm really first came ashore, and that's where we're really going to see what kind of damage the storm surge did.
We're still a few hours away from first light. Robert, did you catch the break of the eye wall? Do you really feel like this is the next one? I mean, this is what Britta and Cambrell are telling us, and it looks like the wind has been picking up throughout these last few moments we've been chatting even.
It did die down a little bit, but we didn't get that perfect calm. I've been through a lot of storms, and I've only gotten a true eye twice. Okay. Once was during Hurricane Ike down in Galveston, and the other one was during Hurricane Harvey in Rockport. And it is one of the most amazing, surreal moments to be in the middle of this hurricane, and all of a sudden everything's perfectly calm. We didn't get that with this one. So it did die down. Things got a little bit better, but not that perfect calm. So I'm happy to hear from Cambrell and Britta that the southern eye wall is moving through the area. That means we're starting to hopefully maybe see the light at the end of the tunnel, but no, not that perfect eye.
It is a fascinating phenomenon. I stood in the middle of one of those in North Carolina so many years ago, and then to see the sun shining and everything else in the middle of that was ridiculous. But Robert, thank you for that. I know we want to we want to let Robert go.